Welcome back everyone once again to another truck request video. Today, as you can see, it's the infamous Azov 4220 Antartic. This was chosen by us in the community in the last video on the Voron grad. So thank you all so much for voting this. This has been really exciting to do. Honestly, I look forward to seeing the Azov Antartic here. I seen it back a few videos ago. People were voting on it. And finally, it got enough votes. It got over 200 votes for this. So thank you guys again so much for the participation. Thank you guys for the likes, the hypes on the video. And also thank you for participating with your nominations in the comments and also the upvotes. It's been great. I'm going to ask you again to go into the comments right now and cast your vote for the next base game truck that you would like to see. And the most upvoted comment will be the one we feature on the next video. Please go to maprunner.info, click on trucks, scroll through all the truck placards. Whatever truck does not have a DLC ribbon on it, a magenta DLC ribbon on it, those are base game trucks. I will also have a list in the comment section of all the base game trucks we've covered so far in this series. So please go cast your vote, upvote, hit the like button, hit the hype button. It will help the channel grow. If you'd like to see the channel grow, please do those things. If not, thank you for stopping in. Now, concerning this infamous vehicle, and I mean infamous because there is something that everyone in the community really have a agreement on. There's a huge problem with this vehicle, and I'll address this a little bit later here in this garage tour portion. But now we're going to talk about engine sets. It got the top one engine, or the number one engine in the game back in, actually for a while, it reigned as number one until I think maybe it was the year 3 pass, I think. So anyways, I don't know the actual season it was actually topped, but 260,000 torque, 11.5 consumption, 1.0 consumption better than the number 2 engine in the game. So yeah, you have more power and it's more efficient than the number 2 engine, which is the Westline V16 M2450, which is on the Cat 745C and both twin steers. So it's a really good engine. This is also in things like the Dan, the Zix 605R, the Thatcher Force, Thatcher T813, lots of vehicles. It's shared with many, but really good engine here. I think you have enough power. What I would do is I would actually just not pay attention to fuel consumption, durability, and power to weight. Just don't even look at these sliding scales when you're in the garage. They're really deceiving. They're not going to help you choose anything. I would actually go look at a spreadsheet if you're looking for power to weight. If you're looking for durability, I would actually just look at the vehicle outside the garage. You can actually look at all of its durabilities. Or you can also look at engine durabilities on spreadsheets as well. Fuel consumption, same thing. Just look at a spreadsheet. Capacity, this is probably something I would look at and reference all these things down here. Now, I want to reference that it does have always on all-wheel drive and switchable diff lock. The instance of having always on all-wheel drive with this vehicle, even though it does have a advanced special gearbox, this is the gearbox I believe you should use, because there is 2 gears, or I would maybe say 3, that you should mainly be in this vehicle. The most gear, I would say the vast percentage of the time you should be in a low gear, most likely low plus with diff engaged. That is kind of where this thing is going to shine, similar to that of the Cat 745C. Essentially, that is exactly what I'm saying. It has a pretty fast paced low plus speed. It's kind of weird, but it does. Sometimes even it will march a little bit faster in terrain on low plus diff lock engaged than just high gear outside of diff lock. But the second gear that I would be in is high, because usually if you're just in an auto and you're shifting up gears and you're not actually getting to the max speed, something that happens is the vehicle itself, with trucks that don't have diff lock engaged outside of low gear, they're not forcing power to all axles. So you're not going to be, it's weird. Sometimes you'll have tires that'll be spinning real fast and others that are just kind of not spinning it at all. High gear essentially ramps up your power and you kind of forces more power to axles to actually drive them. So does low plus. It's almost like low plus is auto 1. So you could actually use auto 1 too. So the 3 gears are actually high gear, auto 1, and low plus. But I would actually use low plus and high as my main, because having diff lock engaged in low is the most beneficial, I think, for performance on this truck. And you'll see that in the driving portion. I'm in low diff lock, just marching through, not breaking the sweat. Moving forward, stock suspension. It doesn't need a raised suspension. It's collision mesh actually in the front is about where this line is, where I'm actually drawing this out. In the back, I think it comes down about 80% of the way on its hitbox, and I think it kind of tapers up a little bit in the rear. So it's not too bad. The tires essentially get it off the ground enough to march over rocks. I have just marched over rocks with this thing, so it'll do it. I don't really think it needs any type of raised suspension at all, and we'll talk about why in a little bit. Tires, we talked about how large they are, 71 inches. This was the largest tire we had for quite some time until we had the tractors come out and they got like 79-inch tires. But overall, what I'm going to say about this is I'm probably going to not use the normal OG tires, even though performance-wise, straight line speed, they are very, very good. But I actually want a wider tire, which is a JAT tire. So I'm probably going to choose one of these tires. And I think these look pretty good. So I'm going to use these. I don't really care about the ratings. I just want to keep it on its wheels. It has enough weight that it's going to generate a lot of traction and it's going to be fine. It is the number 5 heaviest vehicle in the game at 34 US tons. So it's pretty heavy. But I'm going to use those tires to basically get a wider stance because you can see it's not very wide. Winches, advanced medium, of course. I mentioned the engageable diff lock. We won't touch on that because it's always it's switchable. Snorkels, you can use the front facing, but I would actually use this tall cap just because it gets up there to the top of the cab. And not the stock air filter because, well, if you want to drop yourself into some water, that one probably is going to drown out much quicker than both of these. So I think both those other ones will do quite fine. Now moving on to add-ons. It has 5 add-ons, and I only believe that you should use 3 of them. I believe you should use this one, perhaps, as a stretch, but the main 2 are usually just these sideboard beds. This towing platform with the vehicle on top is going to be a huge liability and a huge risk for you. If you don't believe me, go watch my review on this thing. You'll see me driving with trucks on top of this platform. It is not going to have a good time when you hit uneven surfaces. This also adds, center of gravity. I don't believe this is a good pick at all. This is probably not something I would actually use. If it maybe had this up here and this was on here, I maybe would think about it, but it's still weight that's increasing my CG even higher. So I'm not going to mess with those things. So those are the ones I would actually use. Now, concerning center of gravity, as a whole, the community basically is in agreement that this truck just has trouble staying on its wheels. I would agree with that statement, but I don't think it's centered around its center of gravity, because I went back and looked at its center of gravities, and what I found is it actually has a lot of center of gravities that are low back here, and then it has one that's basically like right here in the cab, which if you take this and post this by something like the newer DLC trucks that are kind of posted or that have come out, they are similar. It does have a couple little center of gravities up here, but these are all, I think, like these sunshades or something, these shields. And I don't believe there's a lot of weight attached to those as well. The main weights that I've seen that are significant for being the number 5 heaviest vehicle in the game are all set where I just mentioned, essentially. The problem at hand is this. If we go, I'm going to kind of reference a piece of cargo here that it came out in season 13. Slate blocks. We all know slate blocks are one of the hardest non-logging piece of cargo to move. They gave us some pretty rough times in season 13. But why? Because we call them top heavy, but they're actually not top heavy. Their center of gravity is on that piece of cargo being very heavy is actually like midpoint. The problem is this vehicle and slate blocks both are just very tall vehicles, and they're all very narrow. You can see how narrow this vehicle is. It doesn't have a wide stance. So therefore, and it doesn't have a good suspension. Add in articulated steering and you have a recipe for disaster, essentially. So the center of gravities aren't really helping it that much because, one, the articulation might seem weak, but it's the same power, I believe, as the Cat 745C. It's just weird. The cab will not want to turn unless it's under power in some instances, which is kind of tough. So maybe it could use a little bit more articulation. The problem I think with this articulation is it's on a hinge, essentially just like the Fem. It should be where this cab could rotate or could roll independently as well, kind of similar to the Cat 745C and also the Aramatsu Forester. That is where I believe it could generate some stability. Because when you have a hinge point that's frozen, if this gets knocked off balance, essentially everything kind of goes. And if you're in a turn, it's just going to go, period. Then you have the instance of striking terrain at speed, which the vehicle is slow, but it can get going pretty fast. If you strike terrain at speed, it will immediately, violently, I might add, jar the truck and the rear articulation, basically in a jackknife, and then you just tip over. I've talked about this on my FEM review. I'm going to try to show it in the driving portion. Maybe I'll just throw it up here on screen so you guys can quickly see that. What happens is you'll drive toward terrain, strike it, your cab will basically just jar sideways, kind of like jackknifing the vehicle, and it's really hard to maintain control at speed. So going back to my gearbox options, this is where I believe that you should be marching around in this vehicle at low speeds. That's where you're going to succeed the most. Another thing about not tipping it over, I found that actually just going straight line, sometimes just going straight line and using the gas, kind of like I talked about with the Western Star Twin Steer at speed. Usually when you're trying to put a turn in and your truck is listing over to one side, if you put that turn in, you put that turn going uphill and you're listing to your left and you put the turn in going right, yeah, you're just going to tip over. I would try to allow the truck to basically just strike terrain as new terrain comes up to rebalance yourself. Try not to make as many turns because usually the articulation turning is where you can get yourself into trouble and tip over. So hopefully that kind of gave you a little bit more information on the center of gravities, why this vehicle is infamous, and why it feels unsteady or unstable. Anyways, let's move forward to the driving portion, and I'll talk about how I felt about this vehicle when I first started out and how it stacks up here moving forward to 2026 and also into Q1 2027. As a new player looking in the garage in the store and just browsing what vehicles I can purchase later down the road, starting out, driver levels were pretty hard to come by. I just think because I didn't complete a lot of things fast, and also in Michigan you're not gaining a lot of experience as well. I think you usually cap out leaving Michigan at like level 20 or something like that, depending on how many contests you run. And I noticed that this truck was a level 26 unlock. That is 4 levels from max level. And to be honest, when you look at it, you inspect it in the garage in the store, you're like, whoa, this thing looks crazy. Look at these tires, look at the engine, look at the fuel capacity. This is going to just rock things. And then you get to level 26, you purchase it, and then you use it. And surprise, surprise, it's not really what you expected. And we talked about really the issue at hand is just staying on its wheels. That is kind of what has deterred me from using this thing, but also has been a good challenge to bring this thing out on stream to use it. As mentioned in the garage tour portion, the center of gravities really aren't that bad. It's just the vehicle itself is very tall, its articulation is very bad, the articulation seems weak because the truck is just so heavy. And essentially, those things with just being a tall vehicle, not having a super wide gate or stance, whatever you want to call it, super wide wheel set, and also not having much suspension flex or also frame flex as well. And also the cab just not rotating on another axis, kind of like a roll motion, similar to that of like a 745C. The vehicle is going to be hard to stay on its wheels. That is just a fact that we've all kind of figured out throughout the years. I do wonder though, is there a way for me to keep this thing on its wheels a little bit better? I do believe I kind of mentioned that in the garage tour portion. I think you can use this truck and have good success with it. A time I remember where this thing really came in clutch for me was in Amore. Whenever my game file got deleted after the season 2, I was kind of catching up again, starting to make truck reviews and trying to catch up to where the game has kind of went. And at the time where I was catching up, I was still behind when Amore first came out in June of 2021, I believe. So I just finished Wisconsin, and I think I was a month behind the release of Amore. So when I first entered Amore, I started a live stream. And immediately when I started this live stream, my viewers came in and said, hey man, do this first. Like, go do this and save yourself some trouble. So I wasn't going to take a lot of backseat driving at the time. I was like, let me just handle this and just do this and figure this out later. But at the time I was like, you know what? Cool. I'll go do that mission. And I chose the Azov Antarctic. And it literally did a mission for me that is really, really tough. And you're probably seeing the same area here that I'm marching through is where the task Warehouse Troubles is. You basically have to go back there, grab a trailer, bring it back to this warehouse, and it activates a warehouse that you derive 10 metal beams and some other things from it as well. You use those materials to build a few bridges in Amore in Urska River. This was a huge help. Another vehicle that can do this, of course, are large vehicles with large tires. But at the time, I really didn't use the 4220, so I think it was someone might have been like, hey, use this truck. And I hooked up the hitch to it, and it drove great. It handled the mission. I got there safely, and boom. And I actually used this vehicle after that to load some metal beams in it and also unlock some of those bridges, essentially like right after that warehouse. That was a time where I felt like this truck was, that was its use, essentially. And that's basically what this truck is good at. It's good at marching through really thick terrain. In some of the newer areas in the game where they're just very lopsided, uneven, unpredictable terrain, or even those mud pits that tip you over, the 4220 is not going to be very good there, especially when you have weight on its frame in a sense of just anything in its bed or anything on, logs. And I hope you don't use the towing platform because it'll just be even worse. So try to stay away from those. I do think this truck can be used. You just have to know where to use it. So the question that comes up now is, how would I buff this vehicle? I think the only buffs I would give this vehicle is an always-on diff lock. Just like its brothers, essentially, all the Azov trucks essentially have always-on diff locks. So why not just give this that? It will make its performance outside low gears just that much better. If it's going to be good in low valleys on terrain that's just deep and that's a speciality, then just make it as strong as possible in that arena. I understand I won't be able to keep it on its wheels in certain areas in Amore where everything's uneven, or even in places like Quebec where everything's uneven, or in Season 16 where you have those tippy areas that just kind of come up and creep up on you. But that's pretty much the only place that I would buff this vehicle. Now, I guarantee someone's going to say, well, why not give it more add-ons and this and that when you do this and that? The only other thing I'd probably say is maybe make its articulated steering, give it another axis to pivot on. But then again, if it does do that, then it's kind of, is that getting away from the actual inspiration of the vehicle that it's supposed to be in real life? I don't know. I will say I want to be careful on what trucks I say that should be buffed, because you have to have vehicles that are kind of bad, and then you have to have vehicles that have real performance inhibiting downsides, or just vehicles that are kind of mid-tier to know what a really good truck is. And I think what's going to happen in my new tier list is you're going to see a lot of vehicles loading up the upper tiers. And it's not because I'm dropping favoritism. A couple of them you'll probably see favoritism, but it's just because they're so good. Some of the new DLC vehicles that have been coming out since the Year 3 pass have been absolutely just great. And they have power crept vehicles like this, and that's pretty much the only changes I would bring. Maybe is the adding another axis for the articulation to rotate on, and giving it always on diff lock, potentially maybe a little bit better steering control, essentially. But that's it, man. I think the Azov Antarctic is just a truck that's going to go through heavy, flat conditions and be one of the better vehicles to do it. And I think it still kind of is. There might be a truck that can kind of edge it out now, but I think it's still up there in performance on deep conditions and also crossing ice, crossing water, and stuff like that. And that is basically all I have for you guys today. Please go into the comments right now and give me a comment on the next base game truck that you would like to see next, and the most upvoted will be the one on the next video. I hope you really enjoyed this video and potentially learned a few things along the way as well. So until next time, y'all, God bless and stay upright.